And he goes, look, you have tested positive for HIV.
Wow.
And I physically, like, everything he said after that, I don't even know what he was saying. I physically dropped to the ground, and I just remember, like, everything was moving so fast around me, but it was like it was still at the same time.
Welcome to the podCARst. My name's Darren, Levy, and today's guest is Teri Kearns. She was a passenger of mine back in 2018 and featured on an episode of Funny Uber Rides. Now, if you watch that video, which I'll link below, you'll assume that Teri is somewhat of a party animal, which maybe once upon a time she was, but now she runs a successful marketing agency. She regularly beats the crap out of people in the ring, and she's got a podcast called Fair Bit Going On, which I was actually a guest on last week. And yep, she still likes to party, but not as much, because her plate's pretty full and she's got shit to do. The main reason I invited Teri onto the podCARst is because last year she was diagnosed with HIV, and the story of what came afterwards is a mixture of shocking, terrifying, intense, and at the same time inspirational. I can't wait for you to hear it directly from her, so without any further ado, enjoy. Tez.
Yes?
Hello.
Hello? Are we recording already?
So, yep, this is
I should have known.
You know how this works.
I know how this works. It's never stopping.
I know you're a Revs fan. I know that's like your watering hole.
Can I be like an ex-Revs fan? I feel
Oh, really?
like I haven't been there in a while, and do you know what? I stopped going there as soon as one time I didn't go there for probably like, I'm going to say a month. It was over Christmas and New Year's. And the security guard messaged me asking me if I was okay because he hadn't seen me. I was like, that's a problem. That's a serious problem. So that's when I was like,
right.
I've got to tap out.
Really?
I've got to tap out, yeah.
Is this the rebrand of Tez?
It's the rebrand, yeah.
Wow.
I'm more of like a... That's why I like living where I do now, because I'm closer to like Swan Street, where there's just like cool rooftop bars, not like there's still like dance floors and people still get rowdy, but it's not full on like club vibes.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
I still go to Electric and things like that, but I'm just so past like sitting in the smokers talking. To be fair, I would still love that, but just like not going home for days at a time.
Yeah.
Feeling like absolute rubbish, and because it started to affect like my work and my business, because I wasn't doing as good of work that I knew that I could. So
Totally.
I don't go to Revs anymore, but I still love it. It's so good. If somebody came from outside of Melbourne, I'd definitely take them.
I respect that so much because I feel like this is the what is it? Maybe it's just the natural progression of
I think so.
Like party goer when I first met you in 2018, which we're going to get to that, but the progression of that version of Tez to like you're a business mastermind now. You're a marketer. But then what about like, I know it's probably not necessarily your type of music, but like Love Mac. Have you been to Love Mac?
I think I've honestly been there like once or twice.
Right. Is it because of the shootings?
I just never really thought it was my scene.
Sure.
The shootings didn't really throw me off at all. I heard about them, but I never would have been like, nah, I'm not going there because somebody got shot there.
Honestly, same, because it's actually probably more my scene than it, because I like R&B hip hop.
Yeah.
But the shootings thing, because they've had 2 sets of shootings.
Yeah.
And it blows my mind. And I had a passenger the other night who was talking about the shootings, and they were there like that night, but they had no idea it was happening.
Yeah.
Because obviously music and everything. But it's just so wild to me that like that shit can happen at a club and it still operates. And then I was like, oh, I'm picking up Tez. Obviously my mind went to Revs. but like people have died at Revs.
Yeah.
It's like
because there's a few different things though, because you hear that and you hear the classic story of somebody was found like behind the couch like 3 days later or whatever the rumor is.
Yeah.
And then I've also heard from people that that's not true at all.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
So, and it's nowhere on the internet, like, you can't find it at all. I was like, I think this is one of those rumours that have just got really out of control.
Ah.
But I could be wrong, because it is, at the same time, believable.
It's very believable at a venue like Revs because it's open from Saturday night to Monday morning.
Yeah, and I
something.
think now, I don't know if this is because, it's probably because of things that happen, they close for like an hour for cleaning at a certain point of time.
Get rid of the dead bodies.
Yeah, get rid of the bodies. sweep up behind the couch.
Okay, interesting. No, fair.
Yeah.
It's, you know what? You make a very good point. Even the fact that you said it's not online, I haven't even Googled it. I just took it for people's word.
I did because I was like, if this actually happened, surely it would have blown up. But then again, like, I've been at Revs and I always make friends with like the security guards. Like,
yeah.
I've smoked a joint in the Revs smokers with the security guard because he was like, we've got to go to this exact park because it's out of the cameras.
Right.
And I rolled a doobie with him and we smoked this joint. I was like, this is the fucking best.
That just makes
So
sense.
then I asked him, I was asking him these questions and he was the one that said it was like, there's a lot of rumours that go around, but there obviously is a lot of shit that does happen. And then just as we were talking about this, smoking the doobie, this like businessman walks in, like there's a different door like out the back smokers bit.
Okay.
And he comes in through that bit and I was like, who's that guy? And he goes, that's the Revs lawyer. So they've got like this specific lawyer. He looked like he meant business.
Interesting.
Like, I was like, fuck, he must have some interesting cases.
Around what time of the night was this?
You mean day?
Okay. Oh, legit.
The sun had risen.
The first time I met Teri was as a Uber driver. I was taking her and her friend Miranda home at the end of their night.
Honestly, every time everyone asks me, like, what's my go-to story, like, I tell that story that I go, because it's such a turn of events, and I get in this Uber and then I'm being recorded telling the story and then Snoop Dogg shares the video. Like, everyone's like, what the fuck?
I got to give it to you because, like, obviously, yeah, we're all like born with a different level of openness naturally.
Yeah.
But I feel like you're one of the most open people. And no, but in a very positive way, because a lot of people would see that and go, oh man, like, how do you feel safe and everything? But on the flip side of that, you're a fucking fighter as well. So like, you can hold your own if shit goes down. Has it ever gone a little bit like, you know, you've gotten yourself into a situation where from your natural propensity to openness and you're like, all right, now I got to get out?
I don't think so. Like, I hate like street fighting. I hate fighting in the street. I hate anything that's like confrontation, like outside of a ring, or even like arguments or anything like that. I'm the kind of person that can like get along with anybody, so it has to take something like a lot to get me like wound up or mad. And there hasn't really been many situations that I feel like I've had to use my skills or use my training to get myself out of.
Because you're a master de-escalator.
Yeah, I use my words.
Yeah, no, so I think that's like the way it has to be done, right?
Yeah.
Where do you think it starts? I feel like because you're very smiley as well. Like, I feel like that's like, who wants to hit someone smiling?
Yeah. 100%. That's a good point. Always smiling. But no, I think it's like one of those, it's a skill that you can definitely develop, but I don't think it's a skill you can start off with nothing. Like, my entire life, I've been the one that, like, everyone's like, how did you get away with that? Like, all through school, all through like getting out of things with my parents, de-escalating situations where, you know, I was definitely in the wrong, but I've just gone and apologized straight away, knowing I'm in the wrong, and taking full responsibility is something that I've always, if I'm in the wrong, I will always do. So I think it's like, I don't know, I guess not having an ego, which you learn from martial arts very, very quickly. So I think that's a huge part of it. So I've been doing martial arts for 6-7 years now, so doing martial arts has definitely developed that skill for me, and understanding, like, you know, you can't have an ego in the sport, and you can translate what you learn from martial arts into so many different like aspects of your life.
Yeah.
But I feel like the gift of the gab and talking yourself out of shit is a skill that you're born with or you're not born with.
Sure.
Like,
You've got a podcast called Fair Bit Going On.
yes.
Long-time listener, first-time interviewer. And in one of your podcasts, you shared a story that blew my mind, and is kind of like one of the main things that I was curious to ask you about today. I don't even know how to approach this like delicately, because it's quite a
from an outsider looking in, it's quite an intense thing to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So I was hoping that maybe you could take me through the process
Yeah.
of when you were initially diagnosed with HIV.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll start from the start. Obviously,
Yeah.
I'm like very open about talking about this because it took me a while to though. Like, so being a fighter, I have to get tested for anything that can be transmitted by blood, which is like HIV, hepatitis, ABC, anything like that. So when I'm fighting actively, I have to get tested depending on what promotion it is. Sometimes it's every 3 months or every 6 months.
Okay.
So usually, like, I get tested minimum twice a year.
Okay.
So it's like a normal process for me, nothing out of the ordinary. It was just like, I'm fighting again, let's go get this done.
Okay.
But it was like this one was a last minute fight that I got a call up for. So I got the call up a week out. I took the fight, but my bloods weren't up to date. So I went to the doctors, got my blood test, and I usually get the results back in about 3 days.
Okay.
So I got to the Saturday and I was fighting on the Sunday and I still didn't have them back. So that was like day 5 or 6. And I rang the doctor's office and it was like the reception. They're like, okay, we need you to make an urgent appointment with the doctor. So in my head, I started like freaking out because I'd only gone in for like those tests. Like usually I'll get the other ones as well, which like just while I'm there, I'm like, I'm gonna get tested for chlamydia and gonorrhea.
Yeah, no, for sure.
The less serious ones.
For sure.
So I always just kill a couple of birds with one doctor's visit and get like every sort of like sexual health checkup that I can while I'm there.
Fill like 6 vials of blood.
Yeah, literally, because I'm like, I just want to know that I'm being safe.
Sure.
And so there was one person that I had slept with on purpose without a condom, a guy that I had been seeing. And there was another one that was before him that the condom had come off.
Okay.
So there was only like 2 possibilities. And so that was kind of what was going through my head. And I was like, no, like this guy that I'm seeing, like, like like these are serious things, like, no. So I was like, okay, stop freaking out, wait till you actually know what's going on, because you don't know what's going on yet.
Sure.
So I tried to like calm myself down, but I was already like, I had this gut feeling.
Yeah.
Like this really, really bad gut feeling. I was like, nope, something is seriously wrong.
Okay.
And then...
Is this when it was like 1 day late or 3 days? Like how?
No, so I was meant to be fighting the next day, and there was an hour for me to wait for the doctor's appointment, because they wouldn't tell me anything over the phone.
Gotcha.
I got to the doctor's office, like... But it was meant to be a telehealth appointment because I was just like flipping out.
Yeah.
And I was like outside and I was like trying to knock on the door like an absolute crazy person, but it's closed. I was like, I just need to talk to somebody. My best friend was away, like at a wedding, so I had nobody to talk to.
Sure.
I tried to call my best friend back home. She didn't answer, and this was like before my even appointment was on.
Yeah.
So then I spoke to her and she's like, Tez, it's going to be fine. Like, don't worry about it. Like, you obviously don't have that. And then... So I went home, I waited for the doctor to call me because I couldn't get inside because it was closed. And then, so the doctor calls me, I'm on the phone and he goes, are you with anybody? And I'm like, no, I'm at home by myself. And then he goes, okay, well, do you have like a support person that you can, and that's when I was like, you need to tell me what the fuck is going on because you're stressing me out even more, like building this up.
Yeah.
And he goes, look, you have tested positive for HIV.
Wow.
And I physically, like everything he said after that, I don't even know what he was saying. I physically dropped to the ground, and I just remember like everything was moving so fast around me, but it was like it was still at the same time.
Wow.
It's such a hard thing to describe.
Sure.
About how like everything was spinning. I instantly thought my life was over. I thought I was going to die. Like, I was like, I never can have kids. I can never get married. Like, all of these things that I didn't think I wanted, like, especially right now.
Yeah.
But when you are instantly thrown of hearing something like that about your life. It's just like a whirlwind of emotions and thinking about every possible outcome. And I think I managed to like calm myself down slightly. And the doctor goes, look, we still need to like confirm the test result. And I'm like, what? There's no, like, how would it be positive if it's not positive? Which was all that was going through my mind. I'm like, I think like false positive results are really, really, really unlikely. Like, how would that be my luck? Like, if I was to get one of those, like, it's got to be positive. So he said the real test results would be back within 3 days. And those next 3 days, I've blacked out. Like, I don't know what I did for those 3 days.
Just to understand the false positive thing. In the same way, some people return false positive tests for COVID.
Correct.
It's like when the PCR, because the PCR test is sensitive.
Yeah.
It can sometimes just basically be wrong.
Yeah, so the PCR test is so reactive to the slightest things, which is why people can get them for COVID and they might have, I don't know, a different sort of like virus. But even though the PCR test can differentiate between the common cold, the common flu, and COVID usually, sometimes it triggers it anyway to get a positive, but then the next one they take, it'll probably be negative.
Gotcha.
But they're just so sensitive.
Okay.
And it also is dependent on, so they like go in rotations. So when you like put these into the machine, depending on how fast they're going can also affect false positives.
Okay.
So if the faster they're going, the more false positives you can get, basically.
Okay, I understand.
So it's this, the same sort of test that happens with COVID is the same ones for these initial HIV results, but then so after that, he said it would actually it's not like a test, it's actually my bloods get looked at by somebody in the lab. So like a scientist is going to have like a closer look at my blood to see what's going on.
Okay.
So those 3 days, like I still don't know I don't think I left my house. I took a lot of drugs, just like numbing drugs, basically. I took a lot of Xanax. I think I instantly took like 3 Xanax. I smoked so much weed, and I was just drinking. Was anybody with you at home? Were you FaceTiming anybody?
Or?
I told Miranda.
Yeah.
So Miranda was getting back. I think she was getting back on the day 3.
Okay.
So as soon as she got back, she came like straight to mine. She found me like, I was like lying on the floor, like fucked, like out of it, like smoking cigarettes, like inside my house. I don't even smoke cigarettes.
Wow.
Like I was just really, really not well.
In another place.
In a complete another place. So then those 3 days were up and I still hadn't heard back from the doctor. And then I rang them, got reception, and then they were like, oh, like, we'll get the doctor to call you back when he can. And I was like, well, that's it, it's positive. Like, there's no other, like, really, like, in my head, I can't see it going any other way because, like, he's got to call me back again. So if it was negative, they'd just tell me on the phone.
Yes.
So basically on the day 4, he calls me, he goes, look, I've got some good news and some not got so good news. He goes, it's not 100% positive, but it's not negative. And I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, what the actual fuck does that mean? So they said it's not a confirmed case, but it still could be, basically. And what he meant by that was if you contract the HIV virus, it doesn't completely show in your bloodstream for a while. It usually takes about 4 weeks. So if you've got this virus in you and it's just starting to like attack your cells, you can have there's a little bit of the virus, so it can be picked up, but it's not visible in your blood just yet. So for that next 4 weeks, I thought that this virus could be like it's starting to attack me, and that's what they picked up a little bit, which would have made sense for when I slept with the guy unprotected. And that was like the one time that I'd done it like on purpose. It wasn't like it came off, so it was more likely that it would have been from him.
Gotcha.
So I called him at some point. I don't know what part it was. I was still quite blackout.
This is after those 3 days. They pretty much say you're gonna need to wait now another month.
Yeah.
And this is at this point you call this guy.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand. Go
Yeah.
on. Yeah. Go
So
on.
I call him and I like can't even speak. I'm like this blubbering, crying mess, and he's like, "Tears, like what's going on?" And I was like, he's like, "Just breathe." He was trying to like talk me through it because I couldn't even fucking speak. He thought I was pregnant,
Sure. Yeah.
which is
that's where my mind would go.
yeah,
as well,
100%.
For sure.
So I finally got it out, and like naturally he freaks out as well. So he has to go get tested, but he gets tested and then they tell him he has to do it again in 4 weeks as well. So it was like this big, like longest process of my life. And so after that,
So in the 4 week period now,
yeah,
you're still going to work?
yeah.
Are you seeing friends?
I
Do you
am.
have that in you?
So the first maybe like week or so, I think I did nothing. Like
Yes.
I think I told all my clients I was sick, and I just took that week off.
Yep.
And that was like a week where I just was doing that same shit. I was numbing myself. I was taking more Xanax. I was smoking a shitload of weed. I was drinking at least like 2 bottles of wine a day. And this was like all by myself.
Wow.
And then Miranda would come over and like stay with me quite a lot actually. But this was like in the day by myself, like didn't want to tell people. I told one person that was like my support person through it all.
Sure.
And then, so that's kind of the main reason why I like wanted to come out and speak about it eventually, is because every single day apart from that first week, I like pulled myself together throughout the day. I would go to these business meetings, I would see friends, I would do everything normally, and no one picked up on anything. And then at the end of the day, I'd go home and I would just cry. I would be this big stay. I would drink more. I would smoke more. I would do all this. And I was like, how crazy is it that I can go and act so normally to these people that know me really well, like my best friends, my clients I've worked with for years, and no one can pick up on anything. So how many other people are going through something that's like the worst thing of their life, that's so hard for them to cope with mentally, and they're just turning up and acting normal, like, and you might be like rude to somebody because you're having a bad day, but they could be having the worst day of their life and you don't even know.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's why, like, I guess I wanted to like talk about it eventually.
Amazing.
Just to be like, you know, never be a dick to anybody.
100%. That's and just to build onto that, like, I think that also is testament to the open nature that you have just with everybody in general. What's interesting to me about that is, because I relate to a lot of your like openness. As I'm listening to the story, I'm trying to go like, what would I do if I was in that situation? Which I don't know, because like I really don't know. But the more you explain it, I think I would probably do the same. I think I would probably show up and keep it to myself initially, because it's, forgive me if I'm wrong, but it's easier.
It's so much easier.
Explaining or trying to get someone to understand the mental anguish you're in, that's a mountain in itself. And that's another task that you'd have to...
And especially with, like, I feel like there's such a stigma around, like, sexually contracted viruses, diseases, and things like that, rather than, like... I don't know if I had something else wrong with me that just came naturally. It's so much more of a stigma. So I was like, people were gonna like judge me 100%. Like, it's such a different sort of thing to like for that to be wrong with you.
Like if it was cancer, which
Yeah.
is also like a terrifying disease. I think you're right. Like people would be.
People would
more
be
comfortable
making...
talking about that than
you know, people would be probably making fundraisers for me. People would be doing this and that, not talking behind my back, being like, oh my god, she got HIV. Like, that's fucked.
Wow. Okay.
You know, so it's such like, even like mentally like that, I was like, people were going to think differently of me, like nobody's going to even want to like hug me or come near me or touch me. Like it just, all of these thoughts were going through my head, and I was like, I don't want that. I don't want people to, you know, I don't want people to feel sorry for me. 2, I don't want my family to be like so worried about me, because obviously I learned a lot about like what it would mean if the end result is that throughout this whole experience. And it's not at all now what I thought. Everybody still has the same mindset that HIV is what it was 20 years ago, and it's like this death sentence. But we can get to that a little bit later on, but it's not what you think it is. And I learned that over time, but I was like, nobody knows this. Literally, when I've had these conversations with my friends, like nobody knows this. Like everybody has the same thought, like, oh, that's like a death sentence, you're gonna die, or, you know, like only gay people get that, drug users, and it's just not the case at all. It can affect literally anybody.
Interesting. Yeah, no, the only before I listened to your podcast on this, the only time I'd really been exposed to any content talking about HIV wasn't even HIV, it was AIDS, but Dallas Buyers Club.
Yeah.
That's like and that movie taught me quite a bit about it, and that's like, you know, more for entertainment. So you're right, like it's just not really spoken about much at all.
And then you like, you know, famous people like Freddie Mercury died of AIDS, and it was before there was like treatments and everything. So your mind automatically goes to like, you know, those famous big names, huge worldwide names that got it and died from it.
Yes.
It's like instantly what you think.
Yes. So you a month in.
I'm a month in.
Yes.
So after 4 weeks, I have to go back and get retested. So 4 weeks passes, I get referrals from my doctor, go back to the place that does the blood work, and I'm in there and I'm like shaking. I'm absolutely terrified, and the guy that took my blood was so lovely. Like, God bless so many of these people that were unintentionally there and said the right thing at the right time, that I just really needed, and they didn't even know that they were there for me when I needed it most. So I go get them done, and then the doctor says, you know, since these are like the confirming results, it's not through the PCR test, it's to the lab for scientists to look at it. So he goes, this can take up to 10 days. So
another 10 days.
Another 10 days.
For fuck's sake.
So this whole thing went for
Jesus
almost
Christ.
6 weeks.
Holy shit.
So I waited the 10 days, got to day 10, and I was like, up to 10 days. Like, come on. When you say up to, like, surely I was thinking like day 6 or 7.
Sure.
So I called the doctor, and they did the same thing again. Like, oh, we've got your results, but we can't tell you over the phone. And this is the first time I just fucking lost it. I completely and utterly lost it on the phone. I was crying, but I was past the point of just being so upset. I was angry. I was like, I have just been through the worst 6 weeks of my life. You're telling me that you've got my results right in front of you, and you can't tell me what they are. It was the most frustrating thing and upsetting thing, because I was like, this is my fucking life. My life is in front of you. Like, the outcome of my life is in front of you, and you're just saying, no, we'll get the doctor to call you back. I'm like, when's the doctor going to call me back? And they said, oh, he's really busy. It could take a few days. I'm like, like, this is my life. You don't know what I've been through mentally, physically, like this last 6 weeks. And it was fucking awful. So they heard my, like, obviously, like, not in a good way, this distress. And they obviously knew the situation, like, because I've been going in there to get my bloods done for years. Like, they know I'm a fighter, they know everything. So then that night, I went over to Miranda. She's like, nah, come stay at mine, like, it's going to be fine. I went and stayed at hers. We had a couple of wines together, and then it got to maybe, like, it was just before 10 o'clock at night. And my phone starts ringing. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's the doctor's number, but I literally start freaking out. I'm like shaking. I literally can't even answer the phone. Miranda's like, fucking answer the phone, what are you doing? And I'm like, I can't. So she like puts it on speaker, and it's the doctor. And I'm like hyperventilating. I feel like I'm about to have a panic attack. He goes, all right, Teri, it's all right. He goes, you're fine. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm fine? Like, is it negative? And he goes, yep, it's negative, you're fine.
Wow.
So he knew that he had to get that out straight away.
Wow.
And then I'm like, what the fuck happened? Like, what was that?
Yeah.
And he said that it could have been down to multiple reasons, because I was confused. I was like, in this modern day of medicine, how does that happen?
Yeah.
So one, it could have been when you're like really fit, it changes your blood.
Yep.
So that could have been something that triggered it, because I was just before a fight.
Is that like a hormonal thing?
I don't know. I looked into it a little bit, but I'm not knowledgeable enough. I didn't research it that much. I just know that that's one of the possibilities.
Okay.
2, he said that I could have been in contact with somebody that is positive.
Right.
And I haven't contracted the virus, but there was some, like, I don't know, a trace of it perhaps at the start.
Sure.
But I didn't contract it.
Interesting.
Which was, again, I was like, that's scary enough in itself.
Yeah.
And I've always been like the safe one out of my friends. Like, if one of my friends doesn't use a condom, I'm like, you're so stupid. I'm like, go get tested right now. I'm like number one advocate for condoms, especially when it's like you're going home with somebody you don't know. So I was like, oh, like, I just don't know if it could be that, because obviously that other guy tested negative as well. But there was that one person where the condom came off, and it was only for like a brief second, but I was like, he could have had that and I could have been exposed to it. And that's when I started learning more about how hard it actually is to contract HIV. Even if like if I had sex with him normally, there would be and I purposely didn't use a condom and he did have it, there would be about a 1 in 500 chance of me contracting it.
Really?
Because it's harder to get through bodily fluids than it is with blood, and that's why HIV is more common in the gay community, because when you're having anal sex, it's more likely to tear and have that bit of blood rather than just bodily fluids when there's a lower level of virus, which is your viral load, and that's with anything. So
I see. So I didn't know that. I didn't know that detail.
So when somebody, for example, does test positive for HIV, they get their viral loads tested, so that's how much virus they've got in their body, and they get their CDCs counted. So that's like when your CDC goes below 200, that's when you're considered that you've got AIDS. So that's the only difference.
What's a CDC?
Between, I don't know what it stands for. It's basically like a count of, I think it's
something in your blood.
It's something, and it's your cells. It's like how healthy you are. It's your immune system.
Okay.
I don't know exactly what it stands for.
Okay.
But it's like your health and how your immune system gets rid of viruses, and that's what HIV attacks, is your immune system.
Gotcha.
And your ability to fight off other things. So
Gotcha.
when that's really low and you have AIDS, because you can't contract AIDS, something has to turn into AIDS, and HIV isn't the only thing that you can get AIDS from.
What's the difference between HIV and AIDS?
So AIDS is what can potentially come from HIV. So HIV is the virus that can like lead to it. So that's when you get your CDCs counted.
Okay.
And if they are below, like a normal person's probably like 500 to 1,000.
Okay.
That's like would be considered healthy. And if it goes below 200, that's when you're considered that you've got AIDS.
But if you've got below 200 CDC count, could you also have a plethora of other viruses or
and
things?
then it can attack you easily. So when you've got AIDS, everything else attacks you. You could die from a common cold because it would kill your immune system so quickly because you don't have that protection, because the AIDS is attacking your whole immune defense system.
Righto. Fuck. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you could, like, I don't know, if you had some other, like, really bad disease that was attacking your immune system, like, technically, I guess you could end up with AIDS.
That's so interesting. So,
Yeah.
like, once you have HIV, you really need to maintain a high level of health,
Yeah, so that's
just generally.
generally, and that's why, so people that are HIV positive, they take most of them, there's a few different methods now, or treatments, they take one pill a day, and their viral load goes down so low that if they just did a normal test, they would be negative, which means that they're undetectable.
Interesting.
So when you're undetectable, there's no possible way to pass it on. You could have sex as many times as you want. It's impossible for you to pass it on.
So if you have HIV, you can still have sex with strangers with a condom?
Depends where you are in the world. In Australia, if you're undetectable, you don't have to disclose your status to
Really?
sexual partners.
By law?
Yeah.
Wow, I
Yeah.
did not know that.
Yeah.
Do you know anywhere where you do? Or is this like most...
It's most developed countries. There's even states in America that it's one or the other. Like some states you do have to, some states you don't have to.
Gee, what a mindfuck.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
So there's a good chance that, you know, people out and about Friday, Saturday night, clubs, bars in Australia are sleeping with somebody with AIDS and they're HIV and they're totally fine. Like it's not that hasn't been transferred and doesn't have to be disclosed.
100%, yeah.
So interesting.
But I guess it would be more so like everybody, because I've now that I've been through this and talked openly about it, I've met multiple people with HIV.
Really?
And their kind of outlook on it is like, you know, yeah, I don't have to disclose it, but I'm going to because it opens a conversation about learning what this is that nobody knows, and also like if I want to have a future with this person or keep seeing them, like I want that trust from the start. So that's their outlook on it, but just from like a law aspect in Australia, they don't have to if they don't want to, and that's how far the like so they did this study in the UK. Over a period of multiple years, there was over 50,000 couples, so over 100,000 people. Half of them were HIV positive and half of them were HIV negative, all on the same medication, all undetectable, all having sex consistently with no protection, and there was not one case where the negative person became positive. So that's where this whole campaign, it's called like U equals U, which means undetectable means untransmissible.
Wow. Fuck me. I know,
and that's what I never knew this as well. I like know so much about HIV now.
The culture is very much on the weekend we go out. You know, alcohol's the only drug that it's weird if you don't drink or if you don't take it. So like so there's very much a culture to go out, party, have sex with randoms, all of this kind of stuff. But when it comes to STDs, it's just
nobody
not
talks about them. It's like completely taboo, and it's the same. Like it's not as bad with like sex topics or talking about like kinks that you're into and things like that, but that is still in itself very taboo, and I love talking about that kind of stuff.
Totally.
But then like you head into this territory, like very few people are willing to talk about it, when in reality it affects so many people. Like I know multiple people with herpes. I know now multiple people living with HIV. Like it does affect people, and it does affect like somebody that we've probably driven past in the last 5 minutes.
And then to your point earlier, don't be addicted to
Yeah.
strangers because they could be going through something.
Literally,
like
and
this
they're just
lady here.
acting like everything's fine.
Wow.
Got deep again.
Yes, no, I mean, like, I can't imagine the stress of that 6-week period.
Yeah.
And, like, I guess the way that you managed it or dealt with it was very much privately, with the exception of Miranda. Shout out to Miranda.
Yeah,
It's like,
shout out, Rans.
What a fucking
What a
legend.
gal.
Like, to have been there for you through just what the probably the is it fair to say the lowest 6 weeks of your
Oh,
life?
without a doubt, hands down, worst thing I've ever been through. Just because it's so like drawn out. Like, say if somebody, you know, close to you dies, you've got that like period of like mourning, and you go through the grief process. This is like 6 weeks of not knowing what the fuck is going on. You don't have the ability to process it because you don't know.
Sure.
So it's a completely kind of different process of grief, I guess.
Yes, it very much is. And that's actually a very good way to put it. It's a process of grief because you're kind of coming out of this version of yourself that you were before. It's like, you know, you're going to be a different person afterwards.
Yeah.
So now, if somebody, God forbid, is diagnosed with this, and they're in the similar type of limbo period of finding out if it's legitimate or not, is there anything that you can suggest based on your own experience that they do in this interim period?
Yeah, for sure. I think, honestly, the main thing is do not spiral out of control like I did. And that's so easy for me to sit here and say because I didn't do that at all. But from like a health perspective, when I like came out of this and I was okay, like my health was like deteriorating in other ways from like drinking every day, smoking every day. My health was so bad, eating like bad foods or not eating at all. So that's definitely probably, that's an important thing to consider, but
totally.
I completely get why you can't.
No, but also just like with the knowledge of this, like if the diagnosis was positive and your health was at the point that it was, that could have really affected you.
Exactly. And I think the other thing would be just like telling somebody you really, really trust. Like I had Miranda, and I don't know what I would have done without her through that entire thing. Like she would answer my calls at any time when I'm just like crying because I've lost it. There were so many ups and downs. Like sometimes I'd be like, yeah, okay, it's cool, like there's no way it's going to be positive, and then other times I'm like, this is my life, like this is what it is. So there was so many like ups and downs. So to be able to have that like one person that I could completely trust and go through that whole thing with, it just was a game changer.
Find a Miranda.
Find a Miranda
in your life. And if you don't have a Miranda, I guess the next best thing would be
honestly
lifelines.
Like there's lifelines, but so when the doctor said to me, like when I was the state that I was in, he just was like to me, are you suicidal? Here's a number. And I'm like, that does not help me.
Interesting.
It does not help me at all.
Okay.
And then, like, I've been getting messages like that episode that I made, I probably went live with it, like, at least, I don't know, maybe 6-7 months ago. Since I've been live with it, I've had people find me. It's weird that it's mostly been on Facebook and not Instagram. But they've found me and said that they're literally going through the same thing. And I've been messaging them, like, every day that they needed me, like, waiting for their results to come back, like, trying to help them as much as I can. These strangers that are in different countries. It's happened 3 or 4 times. So yeah, finding somebody that, I don't know, can relate to you or exactly what you're going through. Honestly, like Reddit is a really good one. There's a really good thread in that, in Reddit, which is like a support network basically for information one, and also a lot of people in that thread are positive as well. So when you can find somebody that can relate to exactly what you're going through, can be hugely beneficial.
Wow, that's a gold nugget of wisdom there. No, because that's but that's actually so right.
Reddit.
Yeah, well, Reddit, or even just like I'm sure like YouTube videos would be able to find people that have dealt with it. YouTube videos or podcasts that have people that have dealt with it that you can reach out to. And that's kind of one of the amazing things that I've noticed, I guess, just about the internet in general. Like, if a lot of people see, like, say, a YouTube video or a content creator as completely unreachable, but often, especially with something like this,
100%
if you reach out, they'll reply.
Without a fucking doubt. Like, I would literally reply to anybody that messaged me about this. Or even if it was, like, something different, like, That's like half the reason why I started my podcast, is to talk about things that people don't talk about, and hope that, like, if that helps one person, that piece of content or whatever I'm talking about, if that helps one person, then I'm so freaking happy about that.
That's incredible. I think that's an incredible place to tie a bow on this literal gift of an episode. Like, honestly, Tez, I really appreciate you, and I appreciate you for so many different reasons. And this is something that is like, I just didn't expect, I guess, as like a point of conversation with us.
Yeah.
But I'm like so much richer because of it, and I think people
Oh,
listening,
that means so much. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
I think that was really special. So thank you, Tez.
You're so welcome.
It takes a lot of courage to speak openly about personal things to your friends, let alone a bunch of strangers online. So for that, Teri, I really want to thank you for opening up in the way that you did and sharing your experience with us. Last week I was a guest on Teri's podcast called The Fair Bit Going On. It was a banger of an episode. I highly recommend you have a listen to it. But otherwise, I've left all of Teri's links in the description below. I'll see you on Friday for funny Uber rides.